We'll be starting in a few minutes. We're waiting for two other commissioners. I'm sorry. I might as well tell you now, if you plan on talking on any of the items tonight, you need to fill out a card that's up on the podium. And if you're going to talk on an agenda item, put the item that you're going to talk about, and if you're for or against, you'll see it on the card. If you just want to do oral communications, anything that's not on the agenda, we will hear that too, and you need to fill out a card. And we ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Thank you. We'll start very shortly. Welcome to the West Covina Planning Commission meeting for February 27th at 7:10 p.m. I explained already about what you need to do if you're going to talk about filling out the cards, so I won't go over that again. We're going to stand right now, and we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Jimenez, and I ask that you stand for a moment of silence ask for guidance and wisdom and support as we begin this meeting.
Everybody, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Hing. Commissioner Jimenez.
Present.
Commissioner Redholz.
Here.
Commissioner Castellanos.
Here.
Chairman Holtz.
None here.
None? Okay. Can we have roll call, please, then?
We just did.
We did. I mean, for the minutes. Okay, they stand approved. They'll stand approved then. Okay. Takes us to oral communications. This is a time when any member can speak on any item other than what's on the agenda at this time. Does anyone want to speak on anything other than the agenda? No? If not, I will close oral communications. And we will go to public hearings. Item number 2, administrative use permit number 1733, categorical exemption. Applicant is Steve Sai Wu, location 734 Donabeth Avenue. The request is for a proposal to construct a new 640 square foot detached accessory habitable quarter, as well as a 219 square foot attached single car garage to the rear of the property. The proposed will consist of a bedroom, living room, and bathroom. Mr. Anderson, who will do the staff report?
Our planning intern, Megan Wu, will be presenting that report.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. The item before you tonight is a request to construct an accessory habitable quarters. The applicant The applicant is requesting the approval of an administrative use permit to construct a new 640 square foot detached accessory habitable quarter with an attached 219 square foot garage to the rear of a single family residence on an 11,840 square foot lot. The subject property is located in the single family residential R1 zone in Area District 2A. Accessory habitable quarters require the approval of a subcommittee design review as well as the approval of an administrative use permit. The subject property is located at the end of a small cul-de-sac. Surrounding the property are other single-family homes in the R1 zone, and to the north of the property is the West Covina Methodist Church. The house is located on the southwesterly section of the property, in close proximity to the street. In the southeasterly portion of the property, there is currently a detached two-car garage. The applicant is proposing to build the 859 square foot accessory living quarter to the rear of the house on the northeasterly portion of the property. The applicant indicated to staff that the AHQ would provide a guest house for the applicant's mother to stay in. The proposed structure would include a 640 square foot living area and a 219 square foot attached garage. The living area will include a bedroom with a closet, a bathroom, and a living room. The existing driveway will be extended to provide access to the proposed structure. The proposed height of the building is 13 feet and 3 inches. The design of the structure would include a composition shingle roof and would utilize stucco siding on the exterior to match the existing house. This project went to subcommittee on November 14th, 2017, and they determined that the AHQ complied with the subcommittee guidelines and directed staff to continue with the administrative use process. Staff mailed out notices to the surrounding property owners on November 15th. By November 27th, staff had received 3 letters of concern via email from neighbors of the subject property. The first letter, received on November 23rd, was from Robin Vargas, who resides at 730 South Donna Beth Avenue, which is directly adjacent to the subject property on the northwesterly side. She stated that she and her husband highly opposed this project request. They believed that the applicant was renting out rooms in their house through Airbnb, and doing so had caused more traffic in the cul-de-sac, less street parking, and unsavory characters in the quiet and private neighborhood. The second letter, received on November 26th, was from Andrea Cox, who resides at 740 Donna Beth, which is directly adjacent to the subject property on the southerly side. She stated that her neighborhood is not meant for a commercial hotel or an Airbnb. Rather, it is supposed to be a quiet residential neighborhood. She also stated that security had become an issue since the applicant had began renting the subject property out. She was also concerned about the maintenance of the subject property because there was less landscaping than before, and there was more trash in the streets and in the neighbors' backyards. The last letter, received on November 26th, was from Martha Avila, who resides at 735 South Terrayan Drive, which is directly behind the subject property. Ms. Vargas stated that she believed the addition of the AHQ and garage would lower property value and increase noise and traffic that would ultimately diminish the quality of life for the neighborhood. Prior to setting any hearing, staff generally attempts to determine if there is a solution that would be amenable to the appellant. Staff met with 2 of the 3 appellants who reiterated their concerns. Staff then met with the applicant to discuss the appellant's issues. The applicant stated that he had allowed Airbnb guests, but had now stopped using the service to rent out rooms in the house. He also assured staff that the AHQ would be used for his mother to stay in and agreed to sign the covenant that would restrict renting out the AHQ if the proposal were successfully approved. The applicant also stated that he had increased the driveway paving in their front yard. Based on a site visit, it appears that the redesigned driveway is not in compliance with the municipal code. Staff has incorporated a condition of approval to redesign the driveway so that it complies with the code. After meeting with the appellants and the applicant, it was determined to forward this hearing to Planning Commission. The applicant is proposing an 859 square foot detached 1-story accessory habitable quarter. The proposed project meets or exceeds development standards. The proposed accessory habitable quarter to be constructed is designed similar in nature to the existing home and homes in the neighborhood. As provided in the staff report, staff has made the findings necessary for the approval of a subcommittee and administrative use permit for an AHQ. In addition, staff has provided the Planning Commission with recommended additional conditions regarding the existing garage. The Planning Commission has the option to include these conditions in the resolution. The conditions are the following. 1, the garage door on the existing garage shall be repaired so that it functions and has the ability to open and close prior to the final approval of the construction of the accessory habitable quarter. 2, the floor tile shall be removed from the floor of the existing garage prior to the final approval of the construction of the accessory habitable quarter. 3, if there are no permits on file for the sink in the existing garage, the sink shall be removed prior to the final approval of the construction of the accessory habitable quarter. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving administrative use permit 17-33. Alternatively, the Planning Commission can continue the item if revisions are requested. Are there any questions?
Do we have any questions of staff at this time?
Yeah.
Commissioner Redholz?
Thank you. Yeah, am I, you're saying that the driveway is not in compliance with the code. Am I correct in assuming it was built without permits?
Yes, that's correct. I think they, well, do you have the aerial? Can you put up the aerial? If you see on the aerial, it's been changed since the date of that aerial. So the applicant let us know that there had been some modifications to it, and we went out and checked it and determined that it did not look like it was in compliance. So we'll be, if it's approved, we'll be
Right.
working with them to rectify that situation.
Okay. And can we go back to the picture of the house? Right there?
Oh, yeah, it's,
Because that is not a correct depiction of what it
No,
is today.
that's what it used to look like, the driveway, before they modified it.
Right, because even on the, yeah, on the plot plan, the landscaping is less than half of what's there now. Just so people that didn't make a visit know that that's not an accurate depiction.
Correct.
Okay. And you mentioned that they said that they were doing short-term rentals, Airbnb.
but then they showed us that they stopped.
Okay, is that allowed in the city?
That is not allowed in the city, no.
Okay.
And so one of the things we've done on the reso, the conditions of approval, I'm sorry, the resolution, we have a condition there, which is condition E on page 4 of the resolution. The house in AHQ may not be utilized for short-term rentals such as Airbnb unless short-term rentals are allowed by the city and the property owner receives approval for such use. So we've conditioned it so that now they can be made aware that it's not allowed.
Anyone else? Commissioner Jimenez?
And just to confirm, the condition includes both the existing home or the residence as well as the AHQ.
This approval would run with the property, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay. If there's none else, we'll open it now to public testimony. And I mentioned to you earlier, because we were a little bit late, about filling out the cards. If you have cards, please turn them into Mr. Garcia there so we can see who wants to talk and all that. I'll give you a minute or two to do that. Okay, does the applicant wish to come up this time? Please state your name, and you need to fill out a card too if you have it.
That's this gentleman here.
Okay. Kevin? Okay, I've got your card. Go ahead.
Of 734 South Donabeth Avenue. So I'm getting a little bit older. I'm in my mid-20s now. I'm thinking about marriage and things along those natures. And in Chinese culture, right, it's perfectly okay to live with your parents. And in my case, I still want to live with her. But I grew up in America, and I do also want some freedom. So I felt like building an AHQ will be a great compromise between what basically my family/mother wants and what my culture usually do, and something that I want as somebody who grew up in America. A lot of the problems that stem from basically all the nays are usually went into Airbnb. When I started doing Airbnb, I did not know it was against the law in West Covina. I looked up city regulations. I couldn't really find any. I looked up state and federal and also couldn't find any. The County of Los Angeles allows it, so I just kind of went with it. In my old, where I lived before, there were Airbnbs and nobody really said anything there. I have personally used Airbnb myself and I really liked it. So, and my hosting experience has been very positive. I do like being a host. I did not know that. My neighbors did not dislike it. It was completely news to me when I heard that they were opposed to AHQ based on Airbnb purposes. So when I heard it, there was still some guest book until the end of December. At the end of December / I think by the first week of January, we have stopped it when our last guest stopped it. As for the parking lot, another reason that neighbors want to oppose it is because of street parking. That's why we kind of took away the landscape and added in parking spots specifically so that it will make it easier for street parking, so there is less of a nuisance as possible. When we did do the parking lot, we asked the person who helped us out to make it so that it is within that it follows the municipal code basically, and he promised that it was. So it was also kind of a shock to us when we found out that what we did was not within the code. I guess one final bit of thing is that some neighbors complain that the landscaping has been changed and it's not as good as before, and that is true. I would agree to that as well. One example is that there used to be a lemon tree in the backyard, but I have let it die. But that wasn't because I was being a lazy person. It was just due to practicalities. When we first bought the house, we were like, cool, free lemons, and we did not realize how much lemon a lemon tree could produce. And we actually had 2 of them, right? I think if you ask some of the neighbors, we actually gave them lemons. We gave some of our friends lemons. We gave everybody lemons. And at a certain point, it was just ridiculous to keep picking up lemons to just throw in the trash because, I mean, how many lemons can you give away in a month, right? It was taking up like 30 minutes to sometimes an hour if you let it pile up every time to just clean up dead lemons and throw it away. And that's why we let the lemon tree die. Also, one last bit is that the front of the landscape has been changed and it's not as good as before, and I will also agree to that. When we moved in, we moved a plant from the back of the house to the front of the house, and to this day, I'm not sure why it died, but those type of plants died. Everything else all the other plants has stayed alive. It's just that there's that one type of plant died. So that's pretty much it.
Any question of the applicant? Commissioner Jimenez.
When life throws lemons at you, you need to make lemonade.
Oh.
But please help me understand, you are the applicant and do you live on the property? Are you
Yes.
the person that lives in the primary residence?
Yes.
So you're the owner of record?
Yes.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit more of the specifics on the actual construction, the proposal. We heard a lot about the landscaping, the vegetation, but I haven't really heard a lot more as far as the intended purpose of the structure. And what I would like to hear as well is your understanding of the restriction, the condition being placed on the proposal this evening as far as using it for anything other than for residential purposes. Can you please discuss a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so the purpose, like I said, is for a place for my mom to live in so that I could have some freedom while still living with her. That's pretty much it. I know it's not allowed to short-term rental or anything along those natures because, I mean, there's not even a kitchen in there. It's how, like, nobody, right, you gotta kind of come in to cook. I understand it's not for commercial purposes, and I don't want to use it for commercial purposes. And is there anything else that you are wondering?
Just, you understand the restriction, the conditions
Yeah.
that say that you cannot use it for anything other than
Yeah.
residential purposes?
Uh-huh,
Okay,
that's correct. I understand, and I'm willing to sign the covenant that said so.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you. So, Mom lives with you now in the main house?
Yes,
And how many bedrooms are in the house?
there's 4,
4?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just you and your mom,
pretty much, yeah.
pretty much, okay. And how long have you lived there, own the house?
A little over a year,
A little over a year?
yes,
Okay. And the Airbnb was almost the whole time you were there?
maybe like 6 months.
6 months?
7 months-ish.
And you indicated that the driveway, that whoever did your driveway told
Yeah.
you it was cool? It was
Yeah.
in code? Was this a licensed contractor?
I'm honestly not sure. I asked our real estate agent to say if she has anybody to recommend, and she's just like, this person's okay, and we just talked to that person. I didn't really ask.
So you don't know whether he was a licensed contractor or not?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, that's, a licensed contractor would know what the codes were.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. This is first
No, I
time
understand.
for.
I'm just trying to get a, get a feel for things,
Yeah.
say. And, okay, so this is Mom, right? Hi, Mom.
Yes.
Okay, so she'd be living in the proposed habitable quarter? Right, okay. All right, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak in favor of the project? I have a card here from Martha Avila, but she doesn't say if she's for or against. Are you against the project?
I'm not quite sure. Come on up, because I've heard. So my name is Martha Avila, and
Speak in the microphone,
sorry.
please.
My name is Martha Avila, and I'm at 735 South Terry Ann Drive, so I'm the back house. And the reason that I didn't put a yes or a no is because I'm on the fence. I appreciate the Planning Commission, and I appreciate the city reaching out to me and providing the opportunity to inform me of what my neighbor's intent was with the construction. They were very transparent. I told them my concerns. They showed me the plan and listened and told me that they'd follow up on the concerns. My concerns were that soon after the owner moved into the property, they converted the garage, the existing garage, into living quarters. And I know this for a fact because I saw the mini fridge and the mini stove sitting outside of the property, and you could hear all of the banging going in on in the existing garage. And when I heard that there was now the applicant had applied to construct another living quarters, then I'm thinking, there's too many people, quality of life, and that was the primary concern. Now, following up with Mr. Anderson, I learned that they had done an on-site inspection and the garage was no longer living quarters. And I have not seen anybody or heard anybody living in the existing garage, so it's a good thing. I'm hearing that part of the agreement, if you approve the applicant's request, would be that they would have to remove flooring, remove anything existing that's not garage appropriate. So that's a good thing. And I have my mom who lives with me. I believe your mom might have met my mom, actually. And I am apathetic, or I'm appreciative of a son wanting to have a place for his mom. So that's another reason why I'm on the fence about it. Then I flip-flopped to the concern, I didn't know anything about Airbnb. The neighbors who are on Donna Beth have more visibility to that. And so if they saw there was Airbnb activity going on, the applicant also acknowledged that there was Airbnb activity going on, then there's a concern that once He's got the stamp of approval. The construction is up. It's very easy to put in a little mini kitchen, and Airbnb starts up again. So I would ask, I guess I would be reassured that knowing, Mr. Anderson, I believe, said that part of the approval is that the construction of that property would have some kind of language added to the title so that going forward, if the owner sold the property, it would be acknowledged that that is however it's worded. So it's not supposed to have a kitchen, it's not supposed to be a rental. If that is understood by the owner, and if I see different, I would imagine the neighbors would do the same, would reach out to the planning commission and air our concerns again.
Yeah, we would have, being what they did before, we would probably flag it and have code enforcement go by there and make sure that they stayed in compliance, so. But if all those things are met that we talked about, then you'd be in favor of it. Am I assuming that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I do have another card here against the project. Robin Varga?
Hello. Good evening. I'm the one that was most concerned. I'm actually the neighbor right next to the applicants. And Airbnb, I'm sorry, 730 South Donna Beth. And my biggest concern was the Airbnb. There was definitely a lot of traffic on our very small cul-de-sac. People that I just didn't feel real comfortable being on our cul-de-sac. We did have a break-in of a house on the corner, and as well as a vandalized car. Does it coincide? I don't know. It all happened when they were renting out Airbnb. On page 5, it notes that there would be a covenant in place that they could not rent any of the rooms out. I understand that the adjacent home could not be rented out, period. However, my concern was, okay, so what if they just rent out the rooms? If the covenant is broken, I guess my biggest concern is, what is our recourse as residents if they start renting out again? Do we come back to planning, or do?
Maybe I could help you. Maybe the attorney could help us out here.
Sure. So as is true of any violation of the municipal code, so this is a requirement, assuming the commission approves this as drafted, then this would be a condition that runs with the land. In other words, if they sell this piece of property to somebody else, that person has these exact same rules applies to them, just like they do on what they would right now. That's the first thing. If, let's say, they rent out to Airbnb, you call up the city, code enforcement, is that a division of the police department?
Okay.
And you call up the police department and you say, hey, send a code enforcement officer. They inspect. If they find out that there's a violation, then the city will issue citations, take them to court, do whatever they need to do to get them to make sure that they're complying with the code.
Okay, okay. That being said, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
If that is the case, I know Kevin's mom is Tracy. Never had a problem with them. They've always been very kind. Tracy and I have always, we've even hugged each other. So I don't have a problem as long as it's not meant for Airbnb. I'm really okay with it. I believe in family, and if this is what Kevin wants to do for his mother, I think it's wonderful. Just as long as they follow the rules that are set in place.
So if I understand you, if they meet all the requirements that are laid out by us for the changes and everything, then you're in favor of the project?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak against the project? We have two now that have changed their mind, which is fine. That's fine. That's why we're here. Does anybody else want to speak against the project? Okay. Does the applicant want to come back up and speak to any of those items that they mentioned? No? Okay,
I have a question for the applicant, though, if we,
okay. Could you please come up, sir?
we heard talk about the garage. Was that being rented out too at the time?
No, it honestly was not. Like, we did have people living with us, but before Airbnb started.
You do it.
You can tell us.
Yeah, you just tell us, she'll hear it.
We let the kids use the garage. We brought in fridges and sink salon donations. We did put some stuff in there, but like, it was not in living condition. There was like no installation. There's no shower. No.
Okay, and part of the conditions of this approval, should it go through, would be to basically return it back to where it's totally non-habitable.
I mean, it's not inhabitable right now.
Okay,
But like, we did install a sink. You originally planned to have a gym/workspace in there, so a sink will be pretty nice thing to have.
okay,
But like, if a sink can't be there, it just won't be there. It's fine.
right, okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Kevin, just one, you had a chance to review the staff report. You saw the recommended conditions of approval, correct?
Yes.
And you're
I have.
familiar with condition number E, the house in AHQ may not be utilized for
Airbnb.
short-term rental, correct? You're well
Yes,
aware
I
and what
have
that
no
condition.
plan to turn the house or AHQ or anything else into short-term rental.
So just to complete my comment though, but you're fully aware what that condition is telling you to do, correct?
I'm a little confused. No short-term rental, right?
Correct,
Yeah,
yes. You're
I'm
well
fine.
aware what it's asking you to do.
Uh-huh.
And that any violation of that code requirement may present a situation where code enforcement will go out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just want to make sure you're well aware
Citations.
of that condition. Okay,
I agree.
that's it. Thank you, Kevin.
thank you. Is there anybody want to speak in favor of the project? I know we had two people change their mind, but were anybody here in favor of the project? No? Okay. We'll close it to public testimony at this time and open up to commission discussion.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Oops. Thank you. Two more things. So first is I wanted to say I hope that the applicant is seeing that this is a very close-knit neighborhood. It's a family neighborhood, and that's part of the reason for the concern for the traffic and maintaining that quality of life. And then secondly, my question would be to you, is having a business on a residential property legal? My concern is another twist would be running a business. If there's more space on the property, then possibly a business could be held on the conducted on a property, and there would be traffic. So my question is, what is the process if you want to have a business on a property, on a residential property?
Could our attorney respond
Well,
to that?
that's
please?
probably a question for me, but what I'd recommend is closing the public hearing, and then I can answer those questions and any others.
Is that the only thing you had?
Yes, those
Okay,
were the two
thank you.
comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and if you'd like to respond to that question, I'd appreciate
Yes,
it.
there is a process to allow home-based businesses. Generally, those businesses are only allowed to be a home office by an individual. They're not supposed to be employees coming or going, and generally not much exterior traffic. I mean, there might be deliveries, and people might come every once in a while, but it's not supposed to be like a storefront or a tax office where somebody's coming and there's people waiting. Yeah, no, machine shops, those kind of things. It's an office. It's only kind of business. So there are some types of businesses that are allowed, and Martha could, if she wants to explore that further, she could call us anytime, and I can discuss what kind of uses are allowed in a general sense. But
Thank you.
just to cap that off and bring it back to what's before us tonight, short-term rentals aren't allowed. So hotel, motel type of Airbnb uses aren't allowed per our code, and so that's really what we're talking about tonight.
Thank you.
I do have a question for staff. Do we have anyone who's reached out to Airbnb at any time from the planning department? The reason I'm asking that is I wonder if we could let them know of properties that have covenants of this nature, restricted to not being allowed. I mean, maybe they have a process in place already so that if they're notified that there's been a violation and that covenants are in place to prohibit, that maybe it won't even be listable.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I don't know anything about Airbnb, so I don't know, generally that's an enforcement type of mechanism. I know there was some discussion when council discussed Airbnbs about their companies that do that kind of thing, that liaison, and track information on Airbnb. I myself have never been on Airbnb. We haven't done it, our department hasn't done it except for maybe to go on vacation. We could look into that. I'm not sure, I don't know if there has anything like that.
I could reach out to them as well, just to see if that's something easy that they would accept as information.
Yeah.
And if I could just,
Commissioner Redholz?
thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a comment, with or without a covenant, we don't allow it in the city, with or without. I mean, it's currently not an allowed use. So, but I think, well, I'll save it for comments later.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Okay, we'll close it to public testimony and open it to commission discussion. Anybody want to go first? Commissioner Redholz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, coming into this, and reading the staff report and, listening to the concerns that were first written as part of the staff report from the concerned residents and listening to you tonight, I had concerns. I had concerns going forward here. It concerns me when an applicant makes changes or alters their property without going through the proper channels. If you don't know whether or not you're dealing with a licensed contractor and you go ahead and have work done, that's a concern to me. It's a concern to me that the garage was used for something other than a garage. That's a concern. I appreciate the fact that those that were either on the fence or against it have now feel more comfortable. Okay, I share that with you. I feel more comfortable also. I would also, and I don't think I even have to tell you this, but, I would keep an eye. I would keep an eye on things because there is a remedy, as you heard tonight. So, if something were to change and, I would just say don't hesitate to make that call because that's your property too. And, you have to live with the conditions that are the result of activity that is not allowed. So based on the testimony and based on the applicant, and I appreciate our vice chair emphasizing those conditions, and more than 2 or 3 times the applicant understood what those conditions are. So there's no coming back saying, well, gee, I really didn't know. No one explained it to me. Well, it's been fairly explained. It's on the record. It's on the tape. We all heard it. So, I'm just saying to you as neighbors to keep an eye. And, with that, at this point, I'm inclined to approve. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? No. You had your chance. It's closed. I'm sorry. Okay, if there's no other further commission discussion, I ask staff to read a resolution number, please.
The resolution is an administrative use permit. It is 18-5942. And to remind you before you make a motion, we have the 3 conditions we're recommending be added. Those are not in the resolution, so you'd have to make that, those are the 3, yes. Well, she read it in before, so if you're in agreement with them, I think that's fine. Just make that part of the motion.
We have roll call, please, then.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve with the 3 recommended additional conditions that were read.
Second.
We have a first by Commissioner Castellano, second by Commissioner Jimenez. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Hing?
Aye.
Commissioner Jimenez?
Yes.
Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Aye.
Chairman Holtz?
Aye. Passes 5-0. This action is final unless appealed to the City Council within 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I actually like to add a little bit of something. For all the residents that has concerns regarding this particular property, we will be discussing the accessory dwelling unit new regulations that just started in 2018. We will have it later on this evening. We're going to talk about it. It may affect all of you guys, so you might want to stay a little bit longer.
Thank you. Takes us to item 3, code amendment. This is continued from February 13th of this year. Code amendment number 14-05, general exemption. Applicant is City of West Covina. Location citywide. Request. The proposal code amendment consists of amendments to the zoning section of the West Covina Municipal Code in regard to entitlements and the processing of entitlements. Mr. Anderson, who will do the staff report?
I believe I will.
That's good.
So this is a code amendment for entitlement processing. We've been working on this. The 14 is the year it was initiated, so it's almost 4 years now that we've been working on this. We are nearing its completion. On September 23rd, 2014, the Planning Commission initiated the code amendment at request from staff. Technical issues with the municipal code are there that should be addressed. Issues have been noted by staff for some time or raised when the city hired a new attorney firm, and others have come up since the time the code amendment was initiated. Entitlement processing is a means by which applications are submitted to the city, reviewed, and approved. That's what we're talking about here. So it encapsulates a lot of information, large sections of the code. The city has a variety of entitlement processes requiring staff review, staff committee review, subcommittee review, planning commission review, and city council review. It's an inclusive subject that includes all types of processed entitlements required by the zoning code, such as precise plans, conditional use permits, administrative use permits, tract maps, variances, and several other that I don't have listed. Cities have discretion to establish the review processes that are acceptable to the community. Since West Covina Municipal Code was established in its current form in 1977, which was a good year, I think, but a couple decades ago, some sections of the code have been amended while other sections have not been amended. While most of the affected sections are in the zoning section of the municipal code, which is chapter 26, there are some sections of the subdivision code that are modified as well, and that's chapter 20. The Planning Commission held 3 study sessions, one on May 9th, one on July 11th, and one on August 8th, all in 2017. So with that, I'm going to march through the changes. I believe there's 12 total. And I'll just summarize. Hopefully the Planning Commission will remember, because we kind of went through these fairly more in depth in the summertime. Number 1, establish findings for tentative tract and parcel maps. And I list the section. I'm not going to say it, but the section's up there. It's also in the staff report, so you know what section of the code we're trying to amend. Resolutions for parcel and tract maps include findings. These findings are currently not found in the municipal code. The findings are used to make decisions on projects, and they should be provided in the code so that they are consistent and do not change from project to project. So we've added those in the code. Those are included. Number 2, establish modification procedures for tentative tract and parcel maps. Currently, there's no modification process, and by that I mean what we usually have referred to as planning director's modifications. It's kind of a minor modification. There's nothing in the subdivision section that allows that. There may be times when minor modifications, what we call insubstantial revisions to an approved tract or parcel map, are appropriate prior to the recordation of the map. So that's the second. The third, establish standards for extensions for tract and parcel maps. Discretionary applications approved by the Planning Commission can be extended for 3 1-year periods. There are no standards in the code for extending parcel and tract maps. We've always just followed what we thought was required by state law. Requires tentative maps to have a 2-year period before they expire. Including these standards in the code allows for transparency so that the applicants can know where we got the information that we're telling them about extensions. In addition, based on state law, subdivision is allowed 3 2-year extensions, which is different than we discussed before, but that's something that, and if you have questions, Scott's here that can answer those. But that's something that we were not aware of when we brought those study sessions before, but we were made aware of that in the last couple of months. So we are recommending that we do the 2-year, which is, subdivisions have been 2-year approvals, so they have 2 years, and we've allowed 3 1-year extensions. We're suggesting that be changed to 2-year, continue at 2 years, and then there would be 3 2-year extensions allowed. 4, changing the process for review of slight modifications. The municipal code currently establishes a review board made up of 3 staff members, 2 of them from Public Works, to review slight modifications. This is the only responsibility this board has, and 2 of the members are Public Works. A slight modification is a minor variance for a 20% reduction to heights and setbacks only. It requires an administrative process that provides notification of a 300-foot radius and a hearing scheduled before the hearing board during regular business hours. An administrative use permit is administrative and requires notification of a 300-foot radius exactly the same way. The suggestion here, we'd like to change the slight modification process to require an administrative use permit to reduce processing time and to not include the staff time it's taken up right now from Public Works Department. 5, revising planning director's modification process to modify the title, to change to minor modification and minor site plan review, provide a review process, and establish criteria for approval. The code currently provides a brief statement about a planning director's ability to make minor modifications to an approved application development, and it's basically that long. So from that, we've generated this process we call planning director's modification. We've come up with all sorts of steps to that. And there's nothing in the code that provides information on that or direction. So the current title has led to confusion also on the review and the scope of what can be reviewed. In other words, we now bring some planning director's modifications to this planning commission, which become planning commission authorized planning director's modifications, which kind of gets to the point of ridiculousness in terms of writing that out and trying to figure out how to put that. The code would be amended to establish a process and criteria for minor modification, which is revisions to completed projects, things that are already built, and as well as for minor site plan review for revisions of projects under construction. So that will help clarify that process. And within that process, there'll be some things that will be allowed by staff to approve and other things that would come to the Planning Commission.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Questions as we go, or you want to hold?
That's fine.
I'm
Okay,
just thinking
Commissioner
about it
Reynolds.
while I'm thinking about it, because I might forget
Go
it in
ahead,
5
go
minutes.
ahead, Commissioner Reynolds.
Or sooner. What percentage of, I mean, most of the so-called planning direct PD mods, almost all of them come to us?
No, very
Or-
few. Actually, a very small minority
Very
come
small
to you.
percentage?
Yeah, I don't know the number, probably 5 to 10%.
Really? So 90, 95% we never see?
That's
You just
correct.
handle it at your level?
That's right.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Number 6, eliminating the need for an AUP when concurrent with a CUP for single-family house additions. The code establishes several discretionary review thresholds that define when an application must be submitted for additions to single-family houses. These include a large addition, and I won't go through all the parentheses in here, but in the Planning Commission, I think we'll recognize these. Large additions, maximum unit size exceptions, large homes, and second-story additions. 4 different processes. Some of them are not mutually exclusive. Some of them are mutually exclusive. The large home requires a CUP, and the other 3 require an AUP. CUP and AUPs have the same findings, and when concurrent, generally include the same conditions. By eliminating the requirement for an AUP when a CUP is required, the number of applications required for submittal are reduced, lowering the cost of processing and reducing the number of resolutions that must be prepared. So that's what we're doing there. 7, address requirement for subcommittee review when CUP is submitted for a large home. The subcommittee is comprised of 2 planning commissioners who review single-family home revisions. Generally, when an AUP is forwarded to the Planning Commission, the subcommittee forwards their review as well. Large home CUPs are always reviewed by the Planning Commission by definition. The subcommittee has consistently forwarded large home CUPs to the Commission instead of coming up with their findings on the subcommittee guidelines. They forward it to the Planning Commission. What we're suggesting is codifying that process and reducing a step that would reduce staff time and cost for the applicant. So CUPs would therefore not go to subcommittee. They would all come straight with all the information, including the subcommittee guidelines, to the Planning Commission. 8, modify the expiration time frame for entitlements from 1 year to 2 years. Aside from subdivisions, discretionary applications approved by the Planning Commission are valid for 1 year unless an extension request is submitted. So they're valid 1 year. Many of these applications are for large projects that may take longer than a year to complete plan check and grading. Expiration standards establish a limit on when projects can be constructed as council policy and philosophy changes from time to time. So that last sentence is the reason why there are timeframes, because there may be something that's approved, and 5 years later, the thought has changed, the tone on the council, on the community has changed. They don't want to approve that, so they don't have to keep extending these or allow something to be constructed that they don't approve of anymore if they haven't got permits by that time. This amendment would reduce the number of extensions that are requested. In conjunction, the number of discretionary extensions available are reduced from 3 to 2, so the total extensions will still be at 4 years. So the initial one approval would be 2 years, and then there would be 2 one-year extensions allowed after that, as opposed to 1 and 3 now. So, number 9, requires City Council review for entitlement cases when concurrent with cases that require City Council approval. That's a mouthful. The code establishes that certain cases are approved by the Planning Commission, such as precise plan, CUPs, variances, while others are approved by the City Council, general plan amendments, zone changes, and code amendments, with a recommendation provided by the Planning Commission. When a precise plan is concurrently processed with a zone change, which can happen, it used to happen more frequently perhaps than it does today, but it has happened in the past, the code allows the precise plan to be approved by the Planning Commission and the zone change to be approved by the City Council, which causes a lot of difficulties. Not mainly with CEQA processing. Now the council is approving CEQA because of the zone change, but they don't have the project in front of them, and makes it hard for them to condition. There's also a appeal period issue that happens when you do that. This code amendment would require all applications concurrent with a general plan amendment, zone change, and code amendment to receive approval from the City Council. This makes a more transparent and less confusing process. Number 10, establish standards in the case of split votes on City Council for appeals. And I want to emphasize that, it's not underlined there, but this is about appeals, not about what we just talked about with concurrent cases, it's about appeals. In some discretionary cases, the Planning Commission makes a decision, the decision is appealed to the City Council. When the appeal is heard by the City Council, there may be times that there are only 4 council members hearing the appeal due to an absence or a conflict of interest. This would allow the Planning Commission decision to stand to eliminate the possibility of a non-decision. In cases where the Commission provides a recommendation, a decision of the City Council would still be required. So that's saying, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I just want to get a little clarity on that one. So if there's only 4 members, and, I mean, they could all vote one way or the other, right? Or 3 and 1 could vote one way or the other.
Correct, and that decision would stand.
That decision would stand, but if there's a split 2-2, then our decision stands on a 2-2?
That's what it would be. If this is accepted and the code becomes this, then it goes to, let's just give it a follow through on a theoretical situation. Comes to the Planning Commission, they vote 5-0 to approve it. Goes to City Council, somebody lives within 500 feet of the subject property, and so they recuse themselves. Now you have 4 people on the council that only 4 can vote, and they have a 2-2 vote, then that Planning Commission vote would stand.
Okay, could they make a vote to continue it until they have 5?
They could do that. If it was an absence or a sickness or something like that, yes. But if it's a conflict of interest, that won't help any.
Yeah, without absent a conflict.
Yeah.
They could do that.
Absent a conflict, they have that ability to do that.
Okay. And let's just say that there's 2-2 and our decision stands, so the applicant has no other remedy at that point, other than to go to a court, I guess.
That would be the case. They wouldn't be able to appeal it because the decision
is... the appeal process would be done at that point.
The appeal process is done. The administrative, what we call the administrative remedy, or what courts call the administrative remedy, has been followed through. The only ramification then is to submit a lawsuit of some type.
Okay, and one last thing. In cases where the commission provides a recommendation, don't we always provide a recommendation, or am I misreading that?
No, well, no. So I'm trying to think of an example. Portos came to the Planning Commission as a precise plan. You approved it. You didn't provide a recommendation. Now, if I can't think of a project recently that had a code amendment or a general plan amendment or a zone change, but if you had something that was coming to you and they were proposing to change the zone and a precise plan, then you're providing a recommendation. Or for instance, this code amendment tonight, this is probably not the type of thing we're talking about that this helps in. With this code amendment tonight, you're providing a recommendation. You're not approving it. So certain things the Planning Commission has authority to approve, and other things your job is to provide recommendations so the council can make the decision.
On that same sentence, where it says Planning Commission to stand eliminating the possibility?
Yeah,
Or to stand?
whoever, I'll get with the editor on this.
Okay.
Make sure that's clear. This would allow the Planning Commission to,
Just
this
eliminating.
decision to eliminate the possibility. Yeah, the
Just
stand is.
eliminating.
Yeah, forget the stand.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
No.
you stand at the beginning of the meeting.
okay.
So the planning commission decision will prevail, I think is what we're trying to say
Yes.
here.
And this isn't the language from the code. This is my attempt to explain. Obviously, the editor didn't do a good job, but that's what this is. The actual code language, I didn't cover that, but it is in your, it's in your packet twice. Once in the resolution, and then the very last attachment is a strikeout version. So,
But Jeff, this is a recommendations because I feel like council are elected officials by the people,
that's correct.
the residents. And I think their decisions should stand at the end, no matter what. So if we were, but then this is just a recommendations to council.
What you're providing is a recommendation. You are not approving this code amendment. Only the council can approve the code amendment. And I'm sure they will discuss this. Just to kind of give you a clue into why we're discussing this, a 2-2 vote is not a decision. That's a non-decision. It's the absence of a decision. So that's the problem. It leaves us in a little bit of a, and maybe Scott would like to comment on that a little bit.
From a legal standpoint, I would highly recommend that we recommend this. The reason being exactly what he said, is that what happens if you approve something and then you have a 2-2 decision? Right now, our code is fuzzy. What just happened? We might get sued, well, you approved it. Oh, no, actually you denied it. Well, what happened? I don't want to have a lawsuit about what happened. Just have our code tell us what happened. And we're saying, our code would say, tie goes to the planning commission. And so essentially, court cases, they talk about in the CEQA context that a tie vote is nothing happens. And this is essentially saying that is the same rule that applies here. So in one sense, if the city council doesn't make a decision, it's a way for its decision to happen. Because otherwise, what ends up happening then the applicant or whoever it is, how are they supposed to, is the decision final? Am I allowed to go to court now or not? It makes things easier for everybody.
So it is kind of an interesting thing, and it doesn't feel right on the surface. And the council will have the ultimate. Whatever you guys recommend, the council is going to have the ultimate decision whether they think that's appropriate or not. And I'm sure, I have no doubt that they're going to ask some questions about that. So, okay, moving to number 12. Require a precise plan when a specific plan is proposed in a single-family and residential agricultural zone. The code does not require a precise plan for subdivisions in a single-family zone. Since these applications require a tract or parcel map, this creates the need to modify the architecture site layout changes through the subdivision. Subdivisions cannot be revised after they are recorded, and construction does not generally begin until the subdivision map is recorded. Many times the revisions are to the architecture or to the unit layout, items that are not generally part of a precise plan, not a subdivision. For existing single-family parcels that comply with single-family development standards, thresholds for the size of the house generally require the approval of CUPs or AUPs as well as subcommittee review. So while new houses or house additions on single-family lots generally require architectural and site plan review, subdivisions in single-family zones do not. So I think we just have this hole in our system right now. The amendment would require a precise plan in single-family zones when a specific plan is proposed for single-family houses. And that's it. That was fun. I know you wanted more, but that's all we have. The hearing was continued from February 13th, 2018. The code amendment is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15061. B3, as the amendment does not have the potential to cause significant effect on the environment. And if the Planning Commission recommends approval, a public hearing will be scheduled for the Planning Commission, before the City Council for adoption.
Are there any additional questions of staff? None? None?
I'm sorry, let me pull back. I'm being told I missed one in my excitement. Number 11.
Yes, you did.
Okay. I'll talk to my editor about that one too, yeah. I was trying to get you guys out early. All right, number 11, review the findings for a variance. There are currently findings provided in the municipal code for variances that do not conform to the requirements of state law. The proposed variance findings are consistent with state law and require that there be special circumstances on a lot that are not applicable to other lots in the vicinity, such as size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings. So basically, it makes the findings more difficult for a variance and correct per state law. And with that, I will go to my last slide and close my presentation and ask if there's any questions. Yes, it's a public hearing.
Okay. Does anybody want to wish to speak on this in the audience? No? Okay. So we'll close it to public testimony and have commission discussion. Anybody have anything to say?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Redholz.
Thank you. I will just ask staff to read the resolution numbers for purpose of making a motion.
Yes, it's a code amendment, so the resolution is 1-18-5943.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Redholz and second by Commissioner Jimenez. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Hing? Aye. Commissioner Jimenez?
Yes.
Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Aye.
Chairman Holtz?
Aye. Passes 5-0. Final action on this matter will take place at a public hearing before the City Council on a date to be determined. Brings us to non-hearing items. Study session, Code Amendment Number 17-02. Consideration of potential modification of the downtown code adopted in December 2016.
Might I suggest that, I think we have some folks here that are more interested in the next study session.
Okay. we can
So
do
might
that.
I,
We can
actually,
skip.
maybe you should ask for a raise of hands. I'm not even sure what the folks are here for. Ask if there's some, because we did.
Does anybody want to talk on the downtown plan code? Okay.
Or and maybe ask if they're here for the accessory dwelling unit.
For number 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody want to speak on consideration of potential modification to city standards for accessory dwelling units, formerly second units, due to the state of California's passage of new requirements for cities in 2018? You wish to speak on that? You wish to speak on
Okay.
that?
So I would recommend we reverse the order there.
Okay, we'll do that. We're doing number 5 first. Ms. Sevilla, if you can, if you want to speak, when you come up, just fill out another card, please. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't have the card here, so I can't call her up.
Well, that's fine. Let me give my report first. Accessory dwelling units, this is Code Amendment 1703. This is a study session, not a hearing. The other one was a hearing. We're done with that. We passed that on to council. This is a study session. We haven't drafted any language yet. That would come, there would still be a hearing after this study session before the Planning Commission. City Council adopted Code Amendment 1701 on April 18th, 2017, which initially adopted the state changes to the second unit ordinance, which we used to call it, now called accessory dwelling unit standards. On October 8th, 2017, the California governor signed another bill, which is a cleanup regulation, or cleanup bill for regulations for accessory dwelling units, necessitating some other considerations. On December 12th, 2017, the Planning Commission initiated Code Amendment 1703 to consider revisions to standards for accessory dwelling units. And I'll start through this, but maybe I'll make a couple other comments just so we make sure we're on the same page here. We did have a study session on, I didn't have it on here, but on January 23rd, we had a study session on accessory dwelling units. We covered several issues. We're not going to go back over those tonight. These are different issues than we talked about before, or expansion of the issues. We did have a hearing tonight on what's called an accessory habitable quarter, which is different than an accessory dwelling unit. Accessory dwelling unit is basically a unit. Accessory habitable quarters are quarters. They're detached. It's a detached room addition. It's not its own unit. Conversely, accessory dwelling units are their own unit. They're allowed to have kitchen facilities, they're allowed to be rented separately, they're allowed to have a different family unit or a different unit living in them. So that it is different, and I want to make that distinction between what we approved earlier and what this code amendment is trying to address. So the first thing we'll cover here is detached structure conversions, and all these are found in the staff report. We kind of cover them in the staff report. Well, first of all, the staff report covers the things we did talk about on the 23rd, and we've got direction from the commission. We've got some other discussion here, and then there attached also there's a table that provides some exactly what you're seeing here on the screen: item, discussion, options, and recommendation. All right, so under discussion here on detached structure conversions, state law requires that existing legal detached structures can be converted to ADUs with no notification or hearings. Allowed accessory structures in our code include those things on the list. And then state law allows structures with 4 walls to be converted to ADUs. So that's a significant thing that we discovered in analyzing the plethora of information on state law. Currently, the above list of accessory structures can be constructed within the rear setback. Generally, a covenant is required on accessory structures. So just like the AHQ, which is not an ADU, it's an accessory structure, we require a covenant on that. Many other types of structures, such as workshops, barns, pool houses, detached bathrooms, we have covenants that are filed on those as well. So option 1, we covered most of these options last time, but I'll go through them again. 1, make no changes. Option 2, require a covenant to be filed stating that the proposed accessory structure will not be converted to an ADU unless it complies with all standards. Option 3, consider defining existing structures, anything constructed prior to January 1st, 2017, which was the date that state law took effect. Option 4, consider limiting the size of accessory structures with 4 walls to 500 square feet if they comply with standards for accessory dwelling units. So that would change all structures in the code. And that's not just talking about ADUs, that's any structure in the code. 5, consider changes to the allowed accessory structure list and or allowed development standards. In other words, can they go into the rear setback? How much of the rear setback can they be placed in? And option 6, consider changes to restrict detached garages from being converted to an ADU. We, after reviewing this, and Scott and I, we're recommending option 2, require a covenant to be filed stating that the proposed structure will not be converted. The effective date of this requirement would be the effective date of the ordinance if it were adopted by the City Council. State law allows the city to limit conversions of structures to those with 4 walls, and a definition of existing accessory structures should be provided. So this is a thorny one, and it's difficult. And I'll talk just a minute about how we got here. I've worked for several other cities and know some standards from other cities. For whatever reason, West Covina decided a long time ago to be fairly liberal on their way they utilize the rear yard setback. So if you go to many cities around us, you can't put anything in the rear yard setback. But for some reason, West Covina decided to allow 1-story additions and other things to be placed in the rear yard setback. So those other cities, they have this standard that they can't put those things in the rear yard setback, whereas West Covina doesn't have that standard. So it allows ADUs and anything that's back there now to be converted to an ADU. The remedy, one remedy, is to not allow those things in the rear yard setback. Now that's problematic because there are hundreds of structures in the rear setback now that would immediately make non-conforming. So it's not a pleasant necessary task to do that, and that's one of the reasons we're not necessarily recommending that. I do want to put that history out there because that's how we got here. Because someone, sometime, and maybe for better or worse, because they didn't know this was going to happen. They didn't know in 2017 that the state was going to change rules on second unit ordinances, but they started allowing things in the rear setback. So that's how we got here. My gut feeling is that we've gone too far in allowing too much in the rear setback, and that's going to cause us problems. But I don't know how we reel that back in when we've already existed that way for 30, 40, 50 years. So we're suggesting that the covenant be filed, and we require anyone that puts something in the rear yard setback to file that covenant saying that they will not convert it to an ADU.
I have a quick question. We could change that, right?
Yes, we could.
I mean, that would take an initiation from the planning commission, and then, of course, we go to the city council. But anything can be undone, or the process can be initiated to undo it.
Yes,
Because
that's true.
if I find myself in agreement with you, or, whatever your opinion, that it may be getting out of hand. So, I mean, and other cities have those kind of restrictions. And sometime, I guess, many moons ago, before any of us, the decision was made to, just allow that. But, so in order to walk that back, we'd have to initiate, what, a code amendment?
Well, there's more than one way to do that. One way would be to add it to this code amendment, but I'm not sure that's good or bad, because there probably is going to need to be quite a bit of discussion about that. We'd have to probably present what's allowed in the rear setback now, and then you would have to figure out, well, what do we want to allow there and what do we not want to allow? We'd have to provide you all the standards for that, and they vary. Side yard setbacks vary depending on the area district. So there's two options, I think. One is to do it with this code amendment, and the second one would be to push this one through, get it done, and then initiate a second one, to which we'd follow up and analyze rear yard setback issues in single-family and residential agricultural zones.
Right, and any existing structures would be non-conforming, essentially they'd be grandfathered in, correct?
They'd be legal non-conforming, they would be able to remain and be used for what they existed. We would have to analyze what we do if one of those wanted to be expanded, for instance. If they're destroyed by fire or something else, they wouldn't be able to be rebuilt. We'd have to, again, like garages may be something we might want to allow in the rear setback, but then that has implications on this. So, it is a touchy-feely thing there, how far we want to go.
Right. I mean, I'm just tossing it out. I don't know, where the other commissioners are at it, but, I'm just kind of leaning in that way.
Isn't that kind of what you're saying in option 3?
Actually, it would be option 5. No, I'm sorry.
Existing structure, anything constructed prior to January 2017.
Oh, that, consider changes to the allowed. Oh, no, it's option 5. Consider changes to the allowed accessory structure list and/or allowed development standards. So what I'm referring to is the allowed development standards. It's a little bit of both of those things.
So is number 5 included in option 2?
No, it's not. I'm not recommending that right now because I think
Will not be.
I'm not sure how, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So we're in motion. We've been in motion for decades with the standards we have now. It's hard to stop that motion. That's maybe a horrible way to define it, but that's my concern with it. We might come to an agreement, but it's really gonna change a lot of things that happen and that are in process, and when people want to do additions, and it's going to be a little bit. It's going to hurt a little bit.
But it's something that could legally be done.
Yes.
So let me get this correctly.
Commissioner Hung?
Sorry. Let me get this correctly. So in the past, if there's a structural toward the rear of the yard, such as a garage, a barn, or what have you, to today's code, with the state code, for the second dwelling unit, there's a difference between what we just approved earlier, which is ADQ, which is only for an addition of a room with no kitchen.
Right.
But this particular one right here called the accessory dwelling unit, it's allowed, the state does allow a kitchen with certain size limitations. I think, do we do the 850 or 850 square foot? So you're saying that today, because the state allows all the prior structure to be converted to a second unit, I guess a second unit I'm just going to add with the kitchen. So how does that conflict with the existing code, what the state allowed us to do?
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
And what we're trying to prevent, and that regarding the existing little structure that existed, I don't know, from this beginning of time for West Covina?
Correct.
Let the attorney respond.
So state law says that if you have an existing structure, then provided certain requirements are met, then we must allow it to be able to convert to an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU. So then the concern is this: oh, I know, I can get around the city's rules. I'll build a pool shed in my backyard within the setback. Now I have an existing structure. Now I'd like to convert it to an accessory dwelling unit. And we're saying, we don't want that to be, we want the rules to be the rules and not get around the rules. So we're trying to figure out, how do we do that? So one option is, well, there's one of the state rules says, okay, if you're going to convert an existing structure, it doesn't matter what the setbacks are. So even if you're in the setback, sorry, that's not a reason. So that's our problem, is that if you have a structure within an existing setback, we can't say, no, 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 you can't do it there, it's within the setback, because state law says if it's in the setback, that's not a reason. Now, admittedly, as long as it is sufficient to meet fire and life safety requirements, what is that, 3 feet? I mean, that's essentially nothing, okay? I don't know if it's 3 feet or 5 feet, but very small number. Is it 3 feet?
I believe it's 3, yeah.
3 feet, depending on how tall the structure is and what it's close to and whatever. It's very dependent. 3 to 5 feet, that sort of thing. So really, then the question is, how do we stop that game playing? So, and also, what is a, quote, existing structure? So the rule is you can convert an existing structure. Well, what does existing mean? So one option is option 3, which is to say, oh, well, when the state said existing structure, what they meant was the moment that the state passed the law, that was a structure that was existing. So we're going to say that you can only convert things that existed at the time the state adopted the law. Or you can do what staff is recommending and say, you know what, we're going to be a little bit nicer than that. We're going to say existing is the moment that this ordinance kicks in. If your structure existed at the moment that West Covina adopted this code, then we'll count that as an existing structure. That's what staff is recommending. It's safer legally because you're allowing more things. So the question is, do you do it at 2007 or do you do that at 2018 and change? So we're recommending option 2. I don't know if there's a long-winded answer. I'm not sure that answered your question.
Are you looking for a recommendation?
I think I am eventually. I can see that you'd like to think about it more, so we'll go. There's 2 more, and this is the thorny one. This is the one that has a lot of gristle to it, and you got to chew it. You don't want to swallow it.
Well,
no. Let me go through the other ones,
Okay.
and we can come back. We can circle back.
Actually, let me expand a little bit. Sorry. On the reason that we're recommending option 2 is because it solves the backyard problem. If you build something within the setback, and otherwise we would think, oh, you're trying to get around the rules, mwahaha. You say, no, you're going to sign this piece of paper that says, you know that if you're going to build this thing, you cannot convert it to an accessory dwelling unit, so you can't get around our rules. That solves the setback issue. The one issue with that is they have to fill out the piece of paper and they have to file it with the county. It's paperwork.
If I may, so basically,
Commissioner
like
Reynolds,
the item we had tonight, where he's doing a covenant,
Correct.
this is basically saying that generally,
Correct.
right? Okay.
We would modify that covenant to specify what we're talking about here.
So that would expand to additional structures. You want to build a pool shed, you wouldn't normally be required, you want to build a pool shed in the setback area, you would need a covenant. You want to build a pool shed not in the setback area, no covenant required.
It's beginning to make sense.
Okay. And what I'm suggesting isn't to continue it. First of all, I think you might have some people that want to speak, so I think you should listen to them before you provide us direction. That's what I'm suggesting. Yeah.
Commissioner Ryan?
I actually have a quick question. So when you mentioned setback meaning like the 15 feet setback, if they were to build within that 15 feet from the back of the property line, then they need to state, and it has to stay within that structure, and they cannot convert it back into a second unit with a kitchen?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to be clear, our rear setback is 25 feet. All right. The second item second and third are on the same slide here. Attached ADUs. So one of the things I want to make sure we're clear, there's attached ADUs and there's detached ADUs. There always has been attached second units and detached second units. Attached means they're attached to the main house in some form or another. They might be internally accessible, they might not be, but they're attached, they share a wall. A detached is obviously something that doesn't share a wall, it's separate from the house. The municipal code currently does not require a 25-foot rear setback for ADUs attached to the primary residence. This is similar to a one-story room addition for primary units. Detached ADUs require a 25-foot rear yard setback. So what we're trying to get at there is if somebody does an addition to their house, they don't require to meet this 25-foot setback. They can go as close as 5 feet as long as they don't cover more than 40% of the rear yard 25-foot area. I know that's a long explanation, but that's the point I want you to consider. Option 1 is make no changes. Option 2 is require a rear setback of 25 foot for attached ADUs. Staff is recommending option 1. The code addresses attached ADUs as similar to room additions. From the exterior, there's little difference between an ADU and a room addition. So we think that it's appropriate to allow attached ADUs to continue to operate in that manner where they're not required to provide the 25-foot rear yard setback, and they never have been. That may, again, I'm just trying to avoid confusion with the Planning Commission because attached second units have never required a rear setback, only detached ones. So again, I'm not asking for any changes. I'm just wanting to make sure everyone's clear on that, what the difference between an attached and a detached ADU is. Okay, lastly, windows on the side property line, the same general subject here. The municipal code currently requires a minimum 10-foot distance for windows facing the side lot line. The code is not clear if that is for a detached unit or for both an attached or detached unit. Option 1, make no changes. Option 2, require that the 10-foot distance for windows, require that for a detached unit. And option 3 is require the 10-foot distance for both attached and detached. Option 2 is what we're suggesting. Require the 10-foot window distance only for detached units, only, as attached units are similar to room additions. The same logic as the previous one. From the exterior, you can't tell the difference between a attached ADU and a room addition. And so there's no reason to require different standards. Once you put a new building in the backyard, that's when the privacy standards have become a concern. I shouldn't say start, but we've had testimony that that's a concern for people when you stick a new unit in the backyard. So that's our recommendation there. And that is it for tonight. If we come to the conclusion on these 3 items tonight, then staff will work with the city's attorney's office to draft a code amendment and schedule a public hearing before the Planning Commission sometime in the future to consider that code amendment. So that concludes staff's presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions, or we can open the hearing and talk after the hearing.
Any further questions of staff by the commission? None? Oh, Commissioner Manis.
So Jeff, just to clarify under attached ADUs, so today the code, if you have a single-family residence, it has to conform with the rear yard setback. But if they have an attached ADU, they don't have to conform with the rear yard setback, correct? Okay. All right. I may have a follow-up question afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we want to open it up to public testimony at this time? I know Ms. Avila, you wanted to speak? No? You have a question? Okay, then Jamie Lee.
I was here last time for a study session, and just a reminder, or for those, okay, sure. So my name is Jamie Lee. I was here for the last study session. At the time, I was trying to give feedback in regards to building a detached ADU. So since that last meeting, I have met with the Planning Commission as well as the engineering building to basically figure out what my legal pathway is to building a detached ADU. And I don't have a legal pathway. Without getting into too much detail, I do have a statement with all those details that I can submit for you to review. But basically, the current laws that are in place for building a detached ADU prohibit me from building a guest house on my lot. My lot is a 12,000 square foot more than 12,000 square feet. I have the setback of 25 feet is problematic for me. If it were my primary home and I was building it out, I only need to meet 7 feet, but because it's an ADU, I need to meet 25 feet. The other bit is the 25 feet separation between buildings, which I think serves as a barrier to build, which I would, I'd like the Planning Commission to consider reducing that separation. Other cities don't have 25 feet as such a huge separation. They have about 6 feet. And then the other bit I wanted to mention is also between the planning department, the building department, and engineering and such, all those rules together, they really are very restrictive, and they really prevent someone like me from building. But the current rules allow anybody to convert a guest house, convert a garage, or an addition, Frankenstein, their primary home, do all of these things without the setback rules. But they prevent someone from, like myself, from building a casita in the back that, to me, I think preserves the charm of West Covina more. It resembles, from an architectural standpoint, it's supposed to be the likeness of my home and everything. So I'm trying to figure out a legal pathway to build a detached guest home. It is for my parents. I have 2 kids, second on the way. I really need help. Right now I'm shuttling my mom to come to watch my child every day. It's really hard. I really would like to have them have their own space. They're getting older. I'm looking to, I'm going through phases in my life, from childcare to taking care of my elderly parents. And so what I'm asking the commission to think about is the state statute was passed with the intent to promote ADU development. And I feel like the city ordinances put up lots of barriers for someone like me. When there are no barriers to someone converting their garage. You're going to have a whole city full of converted garages and Frankenstein primary homes when someone like me wants to build a guest house and I cannot. So I would like the Planning Commission to keep that in mind when you think about the setbacks. I have 37 feet in the front that I have to consider, 25 feet separation, and 25 feet in the back. All in all, that's almost 90 feet of spacing. And my lot size is not small. I'm 13,000 some square feet. And my house is not excessively large that it takes up so much lot coverage. And I cannot buy back my patio space because my patio space is part of my roof line. So I have exhausted all measures, and I'm asking the Planning Commission to figure out some way so that we can have some legal pathway, because people have a need for their families or they have some economic need to have an ADU. And I wanted you to understand that the public I'm part of that public and I have that need, and I have no legal pathway except to come here and express to you how your current ADU laws are impacting someone like me. So, shall I have
Okay,
a
I understand your concerns. Not everybody's going to be happy with whatever we do either way. I don't know how to respond to this, Mr. Anderson. Is there any way to adjudicate it?
I'm not sure she's asking you to respond. She's wanting you to understand her issues.
Right.
I think if I don't mean to summarize or put words in Jamie's mouth, but I think what I heard her say, her major concern here is a 25-foot separation between the house and the ADU. So maybe something the Planning Commission wants to discuss after they've heard from the community to see if that is something that you might want to reconsider.
I'd also like to just clarify, I heard this evening that if we were building something within the 25 feet setback, that it was doable with a covenant. I wasn't aware that that was the case. I thought my 25 feet setback, I thought that was a barrier from my builder that prevented me from building. Did I misunderstand that comment earlier?
I'm not sure.
That was not specific to accessory dwelling units. That was saying if you're building, say, a pool shed or something that's not habitable.
I see.
That's what we were talking about there.
Okay, so for ADUs, it still requires a 25 feet separation.
Correct.
So the two things preventing me from build, assuming we pass the 12,000 square foot minimum lot size requirement, would be the 25 feet setback and the 25 feet separation, which I feel, as you were saying earlier, that we should, approach, the state hopes to encourage you to approach it from a fire and safety standpoint versus 25 feet is really excessive. 25 feet from the back and 25 feet separation and 37 in the front. Planning has 25 feet in the front, but the right-of-way is also another 12 feet. When you add that all up, that's like 90 feet. It's quite a barrier to build. And so I just want to give you that feedback.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak on the, Ms. Avila?
Thank you. I have questions. I'm not aware of this this new ruling, so I just had a couple of questions. One is, I don't believe I heard if there was a lot requirement to build this accessory dwelling.
Ms. Avila, I would suggest asking the questions, and we can respond to them afterwards.
Okay, so that's it. If there was because I know with the, what my neighbor wanted to construct, that lot needed to be, I think, like 11,000 square feet or more. So I just wondered, what is the square footage requirement for this accessory dwelling that you're talking about today? Because what I heard was it could be a unit with a kitchen, it could be rented, it could be 850 square feet, but I didn't hear the lot size. And then secondly, just a comment to Jamie, is that she's mentioning about this requirement for setbacks. It does kind of seem excessive, and maybe the city needs to look at a property by property situation, because what comes to mind is all of the construction, or some of the construction that's going on right now, where the homes are so close together. It's crazy. And yet, a property that sounds quite large, there's restrictions on building a guest house. It's just, you've got, the city, I think, needs to be more be more thoughtful about taking it property by property, and not, because on the other hand, you've got that dense building structure by the lakes. Not pretty. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. An answer to the lot requirement size?
Yeah.
Commissioner Anderson?
And Ron's giving Martha the staff report, which might help her to understand some of the things.
Okay.
The current lot size standard is a sliding scale that it depends on where you're at, and it's pretty onerous. What the Planning Commission gave us direction on last time, which council would still have to weigh in on, is requiring a minimum 12,000 square foot lot to allow for an accessory dwelling unit. So that's what we have intending. That's what we're intending to draft an ordinance to do. Planning Commission will still have to approve that, and it would still have to go to City Council. So it's unknown whether that will be the final decision or not. But that's what the Planning Commission directed at the last meeting.
But Jeff, out of the...
Commissioner Hang, do you wish to speak?
Yes.
Just ask rather than just shout out, please.
I thought we were having a discussion here. It's not so much shouting, but okay. I guess my question is this: if it's 12,000 square foot is the limits to have the second or the accessory dwelling unit, do we know by having all these code with the 25 feet setback and the 25 feet separations, how many of the lots within West Covina will be allowed to be able to do that?
Well,
we have
don't
that?
know. That would be, we could spend 25 years doing that, because every lot is developed differently. And you could have two lots that are side by side that have different size houses. One could be two-story and one could be one-story, the same size, but it has implications on how they can do. And I think what you're referring to, which seems like we always get to, is detached. So almost every lot, about 20, what did I tell you, 25? 20 to 25% of the lots in the city are above 12,000 square feet. So that gives you a number. So every single one of those would allow an accessory dwelling unit. It just depends on how flexible you are and what that means. If you're determined to have a detached unit, that's going to be more difficult than an attached unit. You can make a second floor accessory dwelling unit. There's nothing that restricts you from doing that. You could carve out an accessory dwelling unit from the size of your existing house without expanding it. So I don't know, I'm probably answering it differently than you're thinking, but every single one of those lots would allow an accessory dwelling unit of some type or another. It just depends on how flexible and how they want to construct that.
Well, yes, I do understand that yes, you can add, and this law does allow it. However, with the 12,000 square foot, and if we have all these restrictions, at the end of the day, is it 5, 10, 100 that can add the accessory dwelling unit? I guess the question is, you don't have an answer for us tonight.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way you can answer that question.
And I just want to also add that I am personally love second stories. However, oh, I'm being.
You're done. That was unintentional.
Personally, I do love second stories. However, as seniors are aging, majority of them prefer a one-story. Speaking from personal experience, I do have aging parents, and they themselves currently do not like their second stories. So that's, yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I'm in the same boat that you are. I don't want a second-story house either. But why I'm bringing that up is because state law actually addresses the second-story element. It doesn't require it to be first floor. It allows for second story as well. It actually talks about second floor accessory dwelling units. So it's within the panoply of the things that would be allowed under second unit, so, or accessory dwelling unit. So it's good to think in terms of being flexible rather than just thinking they're all going to look like this.
Well, I understand that it does allow, but for people at my age, I'm fine with it, hopping up and down the stairs. However, with my parents' age, if I were to build something like that, I don't think at 80, 90 years old, they want to hop up and down the stairs on a daily basis for accessory dwelling unit or a second units with their own kitchens.
Then you can easily carve out one on the first floor of a two-story house.
You're not being forced.
Correct.
The second story could be the primary dwelling, and the first floor could be where the ADU is.
Correct. Majority of the first floor is predominant kitchen, living room, and really not enough room. But that's.
It wouldn't have to be. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. I'm not advocating that, though.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you address, the speaker was talking about she's restricted by the 25-foot setback, and other cities are 6 feet and 7 feet. And apparently the 25 feet is what is the obstacle for her. Can you justify the 25 feet and explain why we have it somehow?
The 25-foot has been in the place ever since I started working here. So for the past 20 years, it's been in place. So it hasn't been something that we've come up with over that time frame. So it's just a historical standard. I am not we haven't done extensive research on that to determine what other cities do, but I believe that she makes a valid point that many cities don't have that much separation between the primary house and the second unit, or the ADU, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Jimenez.
I think I wrote down a few things here, but I believe the first issue that the speaker may have is the threshold related to the lot size, right? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Are you talking about Ms. Lee?
Yes.
I don't think, she wants to know, I don't think she has a concern with that because
Right.
her lot size is over the
Oh, okay.
12,000.
Okay, so she has that. If I have a crystal ball and I can look down, if I can look down the road, assuming that this ordinance.
Well, I was corrected a little bit. I think
Yeah,
she did state she had a concern.
At the prior public hearing, she
Right.
argued against that threshold. She thought
Right.
it should be lower. Personally, it doesn't affect her.
Right, okay.
But she still thought that it was too high and it should be lower.
Okay, all right, that was a bit of my misunderstanding then. So if I can look down the path of approval of an ADU ordinance here, the minimum lot size, I see that more one as a development standard issue. In other words, someone could come before us and ask to deviate from certain requirements and standards. But also, if I'm understanding the recommendation this evening, if you're to attach an ADU to the home, it should throw out this rear yard setback issue, right?
It does, yes.
Okay.
And just to be clear, that's our existing. We're not changing the code to do that. The code already
Right.
allows that.
Okay. So now then, on that point, though, here's what I'm thinking about an ADU. So if you're to attach an ADU to an existing single-family residence, what we're saying now, rear yard setback, out the door. Is there a possibility that someone may come in and use this to their advantage to expand their single-family residence? That is, bump it out, I don't know, make a family room, a office, and then at the tail end of it, do the ADU, but still call the whole addition the ADU. I guess maybe putting some language, some wording in there so that the ADU is clearly defined. And hopefully I explained that correctly. If not, I can back up and maybe try to reapproach this a different way.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Are you saying defined on a site plan or on a floor
Yeah,
plan?
so I guess the way, so here's what we're saying. Someone comes to the permit center, or I'm sorry, I'm calling it the permit center.
It's fine. We've heard
Obviously,
worse.
War stories, war stories. They come to planning and they say, hey, look, I want to do this addition to my house. I want to add a large office space or a theater. How about that? I mean, we've seen that here before. So I want to add this, and oh, by the way, I want to build it 8 feet away from the rear property line. Planning department says, you can't do that. But then they come back and say, well, what if I add an ADU to the back of my theater? The setback no longer applies.
What I'm not sure I'm following. Is it attached to the house or detached?
Correct. It would be an attached situation.
If it's attached to the house, the setback is allowed to go to 5 feet in the rear yard.
Right. I guess then my concern is that is if they use the ADU as a workaround to expand a home into a rear yard setback, maybe just building some wording or something to clearly delineate where that ADU is when attached to the single-family residence.
Both an attached ADU and a room addition can go to the same place in the rear yard. They have the same.
If attached.
If attached. There's
If
no
attached.
difference in standards. They're both 5 foot from the rear. They're both the same side yard
If
setback,
attached.
depending, if attached.
Oh, okay. I thought
They're
I was
both
hearing
the-
something different.
No,
That's why.
they're the same.
Okay.
That was, and maybe wasn't very clear on that.
Okay.
But that was my point in bringing those up.
Okay.
That an AD, because I want everyone to understand that an attached ADU is treated just like a room addition.
Okay, so
main
then
issue there
either
becomes-
way, you can
Yeah.
still put it up to 5
The
feet.
standards where it's
Okay.
at is not an issue. The issue is that it still can only be, it has to have a 12,000 square foot lot, and
Right.
it can only
Okay.
be 800 square feet max.
Then I wish I can take the last couple minutes back, so I will just vacate my comments then. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I
Commissioner,
think,
Would
yeah.
you like to speak? Yes.
I'll speak.
Yeah. Very good.
I think regarding the separations, I believe LA County has a 10-foot separation between the accessory dwelling unit. Just want to add that LA County does have a 10-foot.
Anyone else? Okay. Where are we? We're going to close it to public testimony now and go
Yeah.
to commission discussion?
So I'm looking
Is that where
for,
we're
I
at?
think I'm looking for direction on 3 things. In the chart,
Oh,
the
we-
detached structure conversion, that was the one we, and I think the second and the third one, I think I got direction, but we might want to reiterate those. And then I think we need to finish up with the discussion on the separation of the primary unit and a detached
Okay, so
ADU.
On number 1, number 2, and number 3, you need direction on that?
I'm sorry.
Do you need direction on 1, 2, and 3?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So just to bring us back around to if you're all looking at that attachment 1, detached structure conversion table, we had recommended option 2, require a covenant to be filed, which basically the applicant then declares that they're not going to convert it to an ADU. I think we did have Commissioner Redholz stating maybe we should be considering looking at our development standards and what we allow in a rear yard setback for all types of accessory structures, and that's option 5. And we talked about that we could do that in one of 2 ways. We could do that as part of this, or we could get this done and then start another code amendment and kind of analyze that in a separate track.
Could you encompass 5 into 2 with verbiage?
Yes, but 5, well, let me say this way. 5, if we go with option 5, it's going to require another study session. There's just no way the staff can, it's just too complicated. We're going to have to bring back all the uses, and we're going to have to explain to you what the development standards are now, and we have to figure out which one of those accessory structures we might want to allow in the rear setback and which ones we wouldn't allow in the rear setback. So that's the difference between those things. We could do that. I'm not sure, Don, if it makes, we could do that.
I personally don't have a problem with option 2. I was just asking the question if there were
Okay.
concerns of the other commissioners, if that could be done. Anybody else have a problem with option 2?
Well, I just, if I may.
Commissioner Riddle?
I mean, what do you guys, what do my fellow commissioners think about 5? Or trying to work it into 2 or dealing with it later? I mean, I'm the only one that I've heard on this. And I know what I think, so.
Well, like I say, I personally don't have a problem with option 2 the way it is. So I just asked my fellow commissioners what their thoughts are on 2.
I'm okay with 2 the way it is.
Commissioner Amanda?
Yeah, same here, I think. I'm okay with it. I understand option 5, but I think just to be very careful or safe, as staff is recommending, maybe that's worth a separate discussion, just to safely walk through that process.
Right. Commissioner Hay?
I mean, it's really difficult because the whole state law was supposed to be allowed aging parents to be stay in place or stay with their kids. But if we're, I mean, 2 seems to be going against what the state law is trying to do or to help our aging parents 30 years from now. And recently, if we haven't passed this, and building is not that easy, it takes years just to build something. And if we don't have these little units starting today, I'm not sure 30 years, 25 years from now, when we really need it, it's not built, so.
So it sounds like you're in favor of option 1, if I'm reading your comments correctly, which is make no changes, just let it be what it is.
Well, do we need a roll call to see where we're at here? Or a majority rule or what?
I think I've heard 3 commissioners.
3 for 2.
Yeah. So I think that's good enough direction for me to go ahead and draft it up as number 2.
Okay. Does that agree with Commissioner Riddle?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I mean, I'm fine with, with tonight going with number 2. I mean, I can live with that, but I also just want to make just a general statement that, what other cities do and the way they look at things doesn't make it right for West Covina. We've got to do, I mean, as far as, my position here, I think we have to do what we think is best for this city. And sometimes we like to hear what other cities do. It's interesting and it's informational, but it's not incumbent upon us to do that. We need to look at what is best for this city, in our opinion. Come back in a few years, might be 5 different people here, different idea. I don't know. But, or the council. The council may say, you guys are crazy. They're the final. A lot, yeah. Don't remind me. They're the final arbiter of what occurs. Okay, they're the final decision makers. They're the electeds. But from my position is that it's nice to know what other cities do. I like to find out, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be right for us. And you have to have ordinances and laws in place that we all have to deal with and comply with. It'd be nice to look at each individual lot and make it fit for that lot, but that's pretty hard to do. You've got to have, when people come in to the city, developers or homeowners, and they want to do something with their property, the city does at that time present them with the development standards. So they know what they can and cannot do, and then they have to make their project either work or change it. So I think I've
A good example of that is the item we had earlier in the evening. Person thought he could do certain things without coming forward and asking what he could do. That's a perfect example of it. But I agree with you. I'm not here to see what other cities are doing. It's a place to look, but I mean, there are some other cities that I think have some horrendous building codes and what they do and how they stack things on property that I certainly don't want to get into. Did I understand that Ms. Lee could not attach this unit to the back of her house?
No, I hate to keep putting words in her mouth, but I believe her concern is she doesn't think that's an aesthetically pleasing way to do it.
Okay, so she doesn't want to do it, but I guess my question to her is, has she considered that as an option? Okay, so I just threw that
Yeah.
out as a question. Okay, so do we need to have resolution numbers read to us?
No, there's no resolution, but we're on number 2, which is the attached ADU, which the
I thought
option
we
was
did- I thought
to,
we agreed to those, 2 and 3.
yeah, so everybody's okay with what, okay.
Right.
So we'll pass that. Then lastly, actually, let me make a notation, because sometimes in the morning I don't remember what happened the night before. The last one was the one that Ms. Lee brought up about the separation. Would you like to give staff direction, any direction to do some research, bring something back, draft something and let you guys decide at the night of the hearing, have another study session? I would suggest that whatever number it is, that's a fairly easy change. You know, look at Scott, he's nodding his head too. So if you give me a number, we can bring back, we can do a little survey, find out what other cities do, and that gives you some kind of idea what other cities are doing in that respect. And
You mean a number between 25 and 7? Is that what you're saying?
well, a number, yeah, any number between, I think 6 was thrown out, so any
Yeah,
number
6 or
between 6
7.
and 25, yes.
So to be clear, though, hopefully I don't mess this one up. I'm sorry for jumping in. Today, the code requires for a single-family residence, if the window faces the side yard, to be 10 feet.
Yes, and I'm not recommending any changes to that.
Basically extending that development standard to ADUs.
Well, no, the
Right.
standard that was brought up was the separation between the primary unit and a detached ADU of 25 feet.
Okay.
That's the question. Is that a standard that you want us to look into? Do you want to leave that alone? That's the question.
I personally like to leave it alone. I don't know about my fellow commissioners.
Same here.
I like for you guys to look into it to see what,
Okay. All right.
whether it's
I
one.
hear 4 for leave it
Yeah.
alone and
So
1 not to.
what we'll do is we'll draft it, leaving it alone, but we'll probably provide you some additional information, just so you have it.
That's good.
Because the council might ask the same question, so it won't hurt for us to do a little bit of work in that
Okay.
regard.
So are we at resolution numbers now?
No, we're not.
Or is it?
You don't get any resolution numbers tonight. So
I'm trying to,
you, yeah, you get to hear this again. No, you've given us enough direction, though, so that we can move forward with that. Yeah, that's fine. We can move on to item number 4 now. Move back to 4 if you're so inclined.
don't I have to read final action on this? No? Okay.
No. But what I would say is that I know there are some people here that are on the mailing list. We have a mailing list. If you're interested in being on the mailing list, contact me. I'll get you on the mailing list, and you'll be mailed out when the notice, you'll be mailed out a notice when this hearing comes to the Planning Commission, which I don't know when that will be right now, because it depends on how long it takes us to draft the document, but probably somewhere between a month and 2 months. And then you'd also be noticed when it goes to City Council. So there's at least 2 hearings left on this item. And with that, I'll turn it back over to.
I think we're going to non-hearing item number 4. Code Amendment number 17-02, consideration of potential modification to the downtown code adopted in December of 2016. Mr. Anderson, are you going to lead us in that?
To try. All right, so this is Code Amendment 1702, Downtown Code. Downtown Planning Code was adopted by the City Council in December of 2016, so we're just over a year from having that in place. It is a form-based code, whereas other areas of the city have a traditional use-based code. So it's based on uses what are allowed. The form-based is based on the form of the building. So it's a different logic. It's new to the city, so we're still getting used to it. Form-based code regulates building form and encourages an urban pedestrian-oriented built form. So that's the downtown area, the area of the Civic Center on this side, the mall in the center, and the Glendora Vincent Triangle on the east. At the time of adoption, understanding that cleanup amendments would likely be necessary, there was an understanding that would likely be necessary, and the Planning Commission initiated the code amendment on November 28, 2017. Staff has utilized the code since its adoption. Actually, even before its adoption, we were utilizing it. We've utilized it in the review of 2 development applications, one of which is moving forward, another which has stopped. Staff has made notations on issues as they were raised or discovered. A table has been prepared for discussion with alternatives and recommendations. So you have that in your staff reports, and I'm going to kind of go through that. This may look a little familiar because it's a very similar table that we had before. I forget the number of items I have here. I think it's 5. So it's not a whole bunch, but a few. And again, there was some direction provided last time, so we've taken that direction. We're not bringing that back to you. This is either information we're further fleshing out or new standards that we think we need to address. All right, so this is add standard for blade signs. A blade sign is a projecting sign that generally sticks above the roof. So if you think of the movie theater in West Covina and the restaurant building right next door to it, then those are blade signs. Those are the only two that I'm aware of in the city of West Covina. In urban development, freestanding signs become less likely, so you start to look at more building monuments, building attached signs. The code allows both projecting and roof signs, so blade signs are allowed by the code, but you've got to go through this cumbersome process of looking at projecting and roof signs and combining the two into one, doing a notification for both. So we think it's important to encourage that. A blade sign is very good for pedestrians because it projects out, so you can see it as you're walking or moving slowly down a street, as opposed to a wall sign or a monument sign or a freestanding sign, which you can catch even if you're going 65 miles an hour on the freeway. So that's one of the differences here between blade signs and the type of signs that we encourage in other parts of the city. So option 1, administratively allow up to 1/2 total sign area on primary frontage. Sign may extend up to 8 feet from the building face and may project to 8 feet above the building. So 8 feet in front of the building and then 10 feet above the building. That's what option 1 is. Option 2, administratively allow up to 1/2 total sign area on primary frontage. Sign may extend up to 8 feet from the building and may project up to 1.2 times the height of the building. We're going to suggest option 2 with some caveats. Allows same standards as allowed for projecting signs and for roof signs, which is what I quoted. For 40-foot tall buildings, this would allow blade sign up to 48 feet. For 70-foot buildings, it would allow up to 84 feet. I didn't just come up with those numbers randomly. In the central part of the downtown, the height limit is 70 feet, and in the outskirts of that, it's 40 feet. So those are the real numbers in the two higher density areas in the downtown plan. 1 times the height of the building up to 10 foot in height. That's what we're suggesting. 1.2 times the height of the building up to 10 foot and would be allowed as a sign administrative review approved by the planning director. I know that was a mouthful. Basically what I'm trying to get at there is we would allow the same type of standards, but because of the higher buildings we would put some restriction on how high it can stand above the building.
Why 1.2, just out of curiosity, rather than just 1?
1.2 is what the code says now.
Okay.
So we just took what was in the code. But if you're more comfortable with 1.1.
I'm just wondering why you came up with 1.2. It just seems odd number.
There's not a lot of logic to it. It's in the code now, and so we just used a current standard.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying it's kind of an oddball number, 1.2 rather than just 1. It's not that much difference, but.
We would be comfortable with 1.1 if you'd prefer that.
No, I don't want 1.1. 1.12. Any questions to staff at this time? Is there more than one?
Yeah, well, there's just let me calm down for a second here. So we're looking for a direction on that option if you're comfortable with that.
So you want to do this instead of doing the rest of them here?
I think I'd rather do it that way in this one because especially these ones are more technical than the previous one.
Okay.
Everybody comfortable with option 2?
Any problems with option 2? Anyone?
I'm not sure anybody's going to speak.
Commissioner Castellano? Commissioner Hay? Commissioner
Can I ask, did any member of the public want to speak on this item? Okay, thank you.
If the member of the public did want to speak, it would probably be best to hear from them before we made a decision. That's why Scott's asking that question.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems like we're all in favor of option 2.
Okay, option 2 is good. All right. Number 2, list of permitted uses. Okay, so every zoning category has a list of permitted uses. The downtown plan has a list of permitted uses. over the past year, there have been requests for types of businesses that are not included in the list of uses allowed. Some of the uses were discussed as potential uses prior to the adoption of the downtown plan, and then based on the discussion of the January 23rd, 2018, the list of recommendation in the recommendation column is provided. So, and then below that, I provide you the types of discretionary review. So, we did have this discussion, although I know that we didn't have a full commission that night. Uses discussed that night, retail and cigar lounges, we talked about allowing that with a CUP. A hookah lounge, accessory use only, would be a CUP. A bar, in other words, a place that sells alcohol with no food, no bona fide restaurant, would be a CUP. An incubator office would be allowed use. It is an allowed use. And that's more defining that term and just putting it in there so people know that it's allowed. And then incubator business startup operation, including kitchen, 3D printing, and similar would be a CUP. So that kind of follows the direction we were given, although we didn't really talk about discretionary application process last time. We just talked about allowing those uses.
Help me out. Explain accessory use on hookah lounge.
Well, in other words, a hookah lounge would only be allowed in conjunction with a primary use like a restaurant.
Okay,
I'm not sure what other use.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sort of like we allow alcohol right now for restaurants as an accessory.
Commissioner Riddle?
Yeah, thank you. You know, since we adopted this and, you know, we're looking to, you know, clean it up or, you know, make it work better, just talking to a lot of people, that I think it is, if we want to really develop, especially the Glendora area, which is where people want to have the gathering place and turn it into, you know, we call it a downtown. It's more like developing an old town atmosphere type of thing. And, you know, if you go to old town areas that are successful, they have what we're discussing tonight. You know, there are businesses that would like to, if it ever, hopefully down the line, it gets approved in some form that we worked on for 2.5 years. You know, we're looking at cigar lounges and allowing, you know, a bar or tavern that is not part of a bona fide eating establishment. I think we have to consider that if we want to have a successful area where people will want to go and congregate and spend time and socialize and mingle and actually and spend some money too. So I think it's in our best interest to actually consider these in this circumstance. I believe yeah. Well, with the recommendations, yeah, with the CUP. I mean, you know, there has to be the CUP aspect.
CUP allows for discretionary review. It allows the Planning Commission to deny things if they don't think it's appropriate. It allows conditions to be placed on to make sure that there's not any issues. So it does two things there.
Anyone else? No?
Okay.
Anyone, are we all in favor of the recommendation? Commissioner Castellanos? Yeah. Commissioner Redholz, Commissioner Heng, Commissioner Jimenez. Okay, we're all in favor of it as is.
Let's go to the next one, which is, this is a little bit longer list, and I may go slow through this so we can talk about each one individually if you want to. I'll just pause between, because I'd rather do this and try to come back to this list. And what happened here is, based on the uses we talked about the last meeting, we ended up having some conversations with the ownership of the mall, the people over there. So that they provide, I told them, you know, if you want us to consider uses, now's the time. Strike while the iron's hot. So they did, and I appreciate that they did provide this. So this is the information that they provided. So in this situation, I provided you most of the time existing requested. The requested is what was requested by the Starwood folks, and then what we're proposing. So again, existing is what the code is right now. Requested is what Starwood is requesting, and proposed is what staff is recommending. So I'll walk through those. First of all, dancing, live entertainment, draft brewery or winery or wine bars. Existing is CUP. They requested consideration of an AUP, but staff thinks that maybe a CUP is still warranted for those because of the public hearing nature and allowing the public to be more involved in that. So I'm seeing nods in my head, or nods in my head. I don't know what I'm seeing now. So, okay, we'll yeah, I don't- I thought I was seeing nodding. So that one we will go for, I'm trying to find my markup here. Ron, if you could mark these up, I'd appreciate it for me. Okay, second is existing, or I'm sorry, restaurant with solo musicians changed to accessory use with solo musicians. Existing is CUP, proposed is AR. So there's, no, AR is administrative review, I'm sorry. Administrative review is basically the lowest, one of the lowest levels of review. Actually, planning director's modification has been the lowest level. AR requires staff level review, no notification, no public hearing, but it can be revoked. It has a revocation process with it, which is not easy, no. So,
Musician, let's say a piano player with a guitar, this wouldn't apply, it's just a solo musician.
yeah, it could be a piano player or a guy with a guitar or a
But
guy with a
not two of them
violin.
together.
Not two of them together, that wouldn't be, so I've not ever, in my career, I've not seen there be an issue with a solo musician. Most of the time, it's a guy sitting at a piano or
guitar,
with a
yeah.
guitar and,
Commissioner Menace?
DJ is not included in this
no,
definition.
DJ is not, that's
Okay.
live entertainment.
Okay.
So comfortable with that one, in AR?
I'm fine with, no, oh, you want to do the administrative review? Is that what?
Yes, that's what we're suggesting. Just to discuss that further, it's a CUP now, there's an AUP is between those two things, which would require submittal, well, you know what an AUP is, we had one tonight. It requires submittal, requires notification, can be forwarded to the planning commission if there's an issue. An AR can be forwarded to the planning commission as well, but there's no notification. So
And
if
this
you're-
is within an existing restaurant.
It would be, yeah, for the most case. I've never had anybody come in and propose a new restaurant with a solo musician. Usually it is after they've opened that they come in and talk to us. And really, I don't even know, we haven't had very many of those, have we, Ron? That's not a very normal thing that people propose. Yeah, it's not, I mean, I think we've all been to restaurants where they had them, and it's kind of neat. I was in Washington, D.C., I'm way off track here, but I was in Washington, D.C. at a sandwich shop at lunchtime, and there was a guy with a guitar singing. It was pretty cool.
Was he supposed to be there, or was he just on site?
No, I think he was supposed to be there. There was no monkey or no organ grinder, no. So, AR, would you prefer leave it alone or an AUP?
I'm kind of leaning towards the middle ground, the AUP.
Okay, I hear two. Is anybody have an issue with that? Okay.
That,
Okay, so we'll draft that as an AUP. Okay, the next one is karaoke. Existing is CUP, and I have to say, you know, sometimes when you do a new code, things happen, you're not sure exactly why. I have no idea why we put a karaoke as a CUP in the downtown plan, when everywhere else in the city it's an AUP, I think. And really, karaoke has been around for a while, and we've approved several of them. We've never had any issues. I don't know that we really need I think that, we're recommending permitted use there, no submittal. Okay. All right. Next is ATM not with a financial institution. So sometimes there's an ATM that's just freestanding. It's not on a bank or savings and loan, if there's those anymore. They don't exist on those. So right now, that is an AR. They're requesting permitted, but we still think it should be an AR because it allows us to condition it. We have never had any issues with those, but it allows us to condition and in case there's any issues. Also, in case they go out of business, we have somebody to track down and try to get it moved out of there.
In a mall, you'll have ATM, but they're not associated with a
Right.
financial.
They're in the mall now, that way.
They're in the mall now, and
With
in
the
the
AR.
mall, inside the mall, we don't really get too caught up. But if it was on the exterior of the mall or on in a shopping center, then we would.
I'm fine with the AR as,
Okay. All right. Massage parlor, primary use. Existing, we have it not permitted. They're requesting permitted. by right, but we think it should be a CUP and in large shopping centers. So the story there is, again, I'm not exactly sure how this happened. You know, we're doing a lot of things when we did this, but the code before allowed massage parlors in shopping centers of over 500,000 square feet. But when we adopted the downtown plan, somehow we didn't include that as an allowed use. So we're okay with it being allowed use, just as it was before the downtown plan was adopted, in shopping centers over 500,000 square feet.
So, thank you. Like right now in the mall, there are several massage uses. At least there were. I think there may be down to one or two now.
Yes, there's a story to that.
I'm sure there is.
Yes. The state in their wisdom, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, maybe it's longer than that, they decided that massage was of critical importance to the state. And so they took away the city's right to restrict massage parlors in the city and required every city in the state to allow them by right. So there was a city in the San Gabriel Valley that ended up with about one massage parlor for every 2,500 residents. They were a very, tight, uptight community, I think. And so it got back to the state that wasn't such a great idea, so they modified that and gave it back. So we have massage, we were approving a lot of massage parlors in that time frame because we had no way of not approving them. But many of them went out of business, and if they go out of business now, they can't be replaced because it's grandfathered, a legal non-conforming use as long as it continues, but once it goes out of business, it can't be replaced.
So, you're talking about a primary use. So, a massage parlor, which has a kind of a bad tone to it as it is.
That's our term in the code.
I know. Massage therapy center might be better. But, so, it's proposed to be a CUP as just a primary use, not an accessory use. So they could go into a strip center, a strip mall?
Okay, so, well, first of all, let me be clear.
Yeah.
Accessory use is already allowed. So we allow accessory massage
Right,
already.
like with a chiropractor or something like that.
Yeah, or with a spa, or sometimes with a health, or a gymnasium.
Yeah.
So, if, what's it, Gold's Gym over there? If Gold's Gym came in and applied for one as an accessory use, we would likely approve them. What we're suggesting is allow massage parlor, the CUP, only in centers of 500,000 square feet. Just putting that in there just like it was before. Because the only one that's asking for it right now, and maybe it's the only one place that's really appropriate, well, that's what it was before. So we think we're just putting them back to the place they were before. Okay. Barber and beauty shops with accessory body piercing. Existing not allowed in the GU zone. Requested AR, proposed AR. So I'm not sure, that's one of those, I'm not sure how I got left out. We don't have really a problem. The GU zone is the perimeter. Most of the mall is in the, help me out, Ron. the portion of the downtown, it's the higher intensity. And yeah, my time's up, I lose. The higher intensity, but the area in the outskirts is the GU zone. So it's the area around the mall or the outskirts of the mall. The buildings up against Vincent are in that zone on both sides of Vincent. So AR, everybody comfortable with AR? Okay. And tutoring facility, existing as a CUP, requested as an AUP, and we agree. We're proposing that it become an AUP. Yeah. Okay. We'll go to the next one, which is the same information, just a different set of recommendations. ATM with a financial institution, that's when Bank of America or Wells Fargo has an ATM on their site. Existing is an AUP, requested is permitted. We think an AR is appropriate there for the same reasons as the other one. Agreed? Yes. And a financial institution is allowed by right. So if there's issues with an ATM, it allows us to condition and revoke if there's issues with an AR. But it doesn't, it's very quick. It usually takes us 2 weeks or less to do an AR. Okay. Lodging, hotel, motel, existing as a CUP, they're requesting an AUP. The staff is thinking that a CUP is still relevant for a hotel.
There's a lot of different moving parts to a hotel motel, and I think that a CUP is the way we should stick with.
Agreed. Okay. Hotel, athletic club, which is basically a fitness center how we people talk today. Existing as a CUP, requested as an AUP, but we still think a CUP is appropriate for a fitness center to evaluate. Okay. These next ones are kind of odd things. A trade show and exhibit building, I'm going to cover them together because I'm not exactly sure what they are. We included them in the code, I think, to allow for hopefully kind of people generating uses that might come to fruition in the future because of technology or market. We put CUP in there. They're requesting to allow them as permitted, but we still think a CUP is appropriate because we're not even sure exactly what we're going to get for those kind of things.
Now, just to be,
What the items are in the trade show.
Yes, exactly. We don't know. We want a chance to evaluate that. We want the public to be part of that evaluation, and we want to be able to revoke it.
no, thank you. Just to be clear, when you say they are requesting, we're talking about the plaza ownership.
That is correct.
Right?
That's
Yeah.
what I mean when I say they,
Yeah.
yes. So good with those two? Drive-through, existing as a CUP, requested as an AUP, but we think CUP is appropriate. Staff still not sure that there's very many places in the downtown that a drive-through should be allowed at all. So I wouldn't want to permit it that use when you really want to kind of phase those out.
Well, like for instance, would the old Elephant Bar be part of downtown?
Yes, the Elephant Bar is part of downtown.
Because I think the Chick-fil-A, that's what they want, is a drive-through.
Yes, you're right. And that will be before you at some point.
Okay. CUP.
Yep. Okay, lastly, farmers market and outdoor community events. Existing in AUP, request is an AR, but we think an AUP is appropriate because a farmers market, it could have implications on neighboring businesses. They might want to be involved in discussing how it's set up. We've never had a outdoor community event proposed. Well, it's been in the code for 20 years or so. We've never had one proposed. That might be, I'm not even sure what that would entail, but let's say like a bi-monthly car show or a monthly car show where everyone goes to one place. That's what, or a concert where there's a concert every.
Well, don't we have that now with this, or
We have
summer
concerts in the park
and stuff?
only for the summer. This would be an ongoing thing that lasts
Okay, so if it's
perennially.
a temporary, or not a temporary, but a seasonal, or that doesn't apply?
No, that's temporary.
Okay.
This is permanent, perpetual or perennial.
Commissioner Redholt?
Thank you. Just, with the potential for activity, more activity in the Glendora Avenue area, I talk to people that are in the event business and planning business and all that. I think we know one individual in particular who's very interested in how this goes forward, but they're talking about programming. That's the
Yes,
word. The key
yes,
word is
yes,
programming.
it is.
And that would entail a lot more than just, a summer event, or that involves a whole year of programming to bring people into the area. You've got to have things laid out and programmed. So, the AR, definitely not. I think you have to have the AUP, you have to have some control.
Okay. Everybody comfortable with that? All right, so we'll move on to the next one, which is number 4.
Can I just say one thing before we move on? Because this is all, I think it's interesting that all of this is requested by the ownership of the plaza, because they're forward thinkers, okay? They're looking way down the way, okay, because of what's occurring with malls in general throughout the country and in retail. They are planning ahead for potential other uses or some reconfiguration of the property and adding things, hotel, motel. There's a lot of other things that play into this, and I think they're being very wise in bringing this list to us and getting it on the books.
Agreed, and one other comment on that is that as you may remember, when Kaiser was working with us on the downtown plan and in the general plan, one of his points on a form-based code is that you're supposed to focus on form and not so much on use. So it should be, as we move through time, that we should be loosening up on uses. The uses should be more free-flowing, and you shouldn't have as many discretionary applications. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't know that we want to do that overnight, but as we review uses, we probably should be looking at trying to make them easier to go through the discretionary process rather than more difficult, or leaving them the same. Okay, I'll go on to number 4, parking requirement for Glendora Shops. Glendora Shops is a situation where they've never really provided their own parking because it's a city-owned parking lot. It's how it's been historically. So we talked about that last time. The issue, so this is set up a little bit different. Issue number 1, require no parking for existing floor area. Parking required for floor area greater than existing. Parking would only required for additional floor area. So we talked about that last time. That in other words, that if someone came in to redevelop in the Glendora Shops area, that the existing square footage would be, they wouldn't have to provide parking to replace the existing square footage, only the portion that they were adding to. So if they tore down a 3,000 square foot building and built a 5,000 square foot building, they would be required to provide the parking for the 2,000 square foot, not the whole 5,000. Issue 2, in addition to the parking requirement for the redevelopment of the buildings, it is also important to clarify what happens if a use with a more intense parking requirement wants to go into one of the Glendora Shops. So this is what I was just talking about. You want to allow free-flowing uses. And the main intensive parking issue that we have with a use is restaurants. Large restaurants are the most intense parking use generally that you have. There are other more intense ones, but that's what comes to mind because that's what you want to have down there. So you don't want to stop people from opening restaurants because there's not enough parking. You want to have the parking completely utilized and have the restaurants there because you want the people there. So our recommendation is kind of fourfold here. The code should define the Glendora Shops as those properties in the shopfront overlay. The shopfront overlay is in the downtown plan. It's all the uses from Walnut Creek Parkway to Dalewood on both sides of the street. Allow all commercial and restaurant uses with no increase in parking. So in other words, what that's saying is if I have a retail business and it goes out of business and now I lease to a restaurant, they should be allowed to do that without increasing the parking requirement. When I say that, and that may strike you as kind of not counterintuitive, but the problem is the buildings are existing. If they're switching uses, you can't provide more parking. It is what it is. So you want to allow that use to go in there. Otherwise, we're going to keep what we have out there now. And the uses that we want to go in there are not going to be able to because they're parking intense uses. And they require more parking than a nail shop or a bar or I'm not sure what else is out there. But the uses that are out there, it's going to require more. An office use, for instance, is going to require more. So all those, that's why we say that. Allow all uses requiring an AUP or a CUP to address parking requirements through that process. So if you need a CUP for a use and it requires more parking, let's say a tutoring center for lack of, or a school use, and that's a school use that you want there, you can address their parking requirement through the CUP without a variance. Scott's going to write all these, so we don't have to worry about how this is all written.
This is a question that, the theater over there, they've got their own parking structure, but invariably, most people park on Glendora on both sides. I know that the businesses in the old town there, put up signs, no theater parking, all that. How's this going to be impacted with the new downtown and all that down there?
Well, first of all, that's not under my authority or your authority,
right. So
I don't have an answer for you. There are many ways to address that. The easiest way to address that without parking costs is to put timed parking in. So there has been discussion about that.
You mean meter parking?
Not meter parking, time parking. You can't park more than an hour.
Okay.
If you can't park more than an hour, you're likely not to go to the movies and park there. If you come out and get a ticket, it's not worth the. So now you're going to park where you're supposed to park when you go to the theater, which is in the structure or in the parking lot to the north.
Okay.
I think we all know there's plenty of parking out there. It's not a parking issue. It's a parking convenience issue. But we've got, if you want that to be a popular place, convenience of parking is got to be 3 or 4 things down the priority list.
The only problem with that is parking enforcement doesn't work at night. So you put a time thing up there and
Well,
going to enforce it.
yeah.
But it's just
And that's now. We'll have to see how it works in the future. Lastly, allow medical uses 2,500 square feet or smaller by right. For medical uses over 2,500 square feet, allow with the approval of a CUP in the storefront overlay. That's a little awkward, but the thing is, I don't know that you want to have a bunch of medical uses down there because you want window front, shop front, you want activity. And while it might be okay to have small ones, you don't want a bunch of them. Everybody okay with those? Okay. Number 5, and this is the last one, setbacks from single-family zones. Actually, this was brought up by a community member at the last meeting. Properties located in the downtown plan are adjacent to single-family zones. Quite a few of them, actually. Not the majority, but there's quite a few single-family zones that are adjacent. All areas adjacent to single-family zones are general urban. General urban setback standards do not require a side setback and require a 5-foot rear setback. So just to reiterate that, they don't require a side setback, they require a 5-foot rear setback. We have properties with the side setback adjacent to single-family houses. It might be appropriate to require a greater setback on side and rear property lines when adjacent to single-family zones. Previous zoning classifications required a side setback of between 0 and 15 feet, depending on which zone it was, with 10 foot being the most common. Previous zoning classifications required a rear setback of 15 feet. So option 1, make no changes. Option 2, require a side setback of 10 feet. Option 3, require a side setback of 15 feet. Option 4, require a rear setback of 15 feet. We're going to suggest options 2 and 4, those are the most common previous, which would be a side setback of 10 feet and a rear setback of 15 feet, and that only when it's adjacent to single-family residential, yeah. Does that sound good?
Commissioner Hang?
I actually think the side setback with the downtown area of the building is 40 feet tall or 70 feet tall, should be 15 feet setback. That's just a suggestion. I mean, the fire department can get through it
Instead of 10,
easier.
do 15 foot?
Basically 15, 15. 15 for the rear,
Okay.
also 15 for the side as well. Because those buildings are tall, fire department and equipment also needs
Well,
to be there
and let me
as
also be
well.
clear, there's no place in the downtown, I don't have a map, I maybe should have got one. There's no place in the downtown plan where a 70-foot building is allowed next to a single family.
But there's 40 feet,
But
right?
40 foot, and then, actually, I think we have, it's 35 within 100 feet, so it's 35. That's the number you're thinking of.
Okay.
But still, it's still a significant number.
Correct.
Because they're next to single-family houses can't go to 35 feet, they can only go to 25. So you do, it's a valid point, so I don't know how the rest of the commission feels.
Lay it out for me again, what she's recommending.
Okay, so what we were suggesting, based primarily on what was there before, is a 10-foot side yard setback.
Right.
Where it's adjacent to a single-family residential. What Commissioner Hing is suggesting is not 10, 15. And that was a standard. Some of the areas, depending on what zone was next to it, was 15 before. So it's not out of the question that still fits into that parameter of what was there before. So what Commissioner Hing is suggesting is 15 and 15 when it's adjacent to single-family residential.
Commissioner Menace?
It sounds like it offers greater protection for those single-family districts. I guess there is logic tied to it, right? And it's something consistent with maybe what we're doing today. I'm open to that.
So you're saying leave it alone?
Yeah.
Or are you saying,
Support the 15 and the 15.
oh, 15 and
Yeah.
15? Okay. Anyone else? I'd go with the 15 and 15 also.
Yeah, I know I've heard comments from neighbors in the area who, that's basically what they want is more protection, so I'm okay with that.
Commissioner Arnold? Okay, we're all good with 15 and 15.
We'll go 15 and 15. And
Thank you, Commissioner Hing.
And I've got the information I need, so I don't need anything, I don't need a vote or anything. That is the same situation as the accessory dwelling unit, although I think the downtown plan will take us longer to draft the changes. So I expect that the ADU will come back to you first, before, maybe a month or so before the downtown plan, but we wouldn't have any further study sessions, we'd just be bringing back the code amendment. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Takes us to continuation of oral communications. Anybody want to speak on oral communications? Not an agenda item. She was on agenda, right? Hers was an agenda item. Ms. Lee, hers was an agenda item.
I think she already spoke.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Yes. That's not what oral communications is, anything other than an agenda item. No. No, you're not. Sorry. That's the rules, not mine. Commission reports, comments, and miscellaneous items? Anything? No? No? Okay. Where are we at here? Planning Director's report.
In your package tonight, you have a forthcoming, we don't have any items for... Excuse me. In your packet, you have the forthcoming. We don't have any items currently for the first meeting in March, but we do expect to have items for the second meeting, so you have a little time off to enjoy, to prepare for St. Patrick's Day. And then we have the project status report that talks about the projects that the Planning Commission approved over the past few years. That's all I have to report there.
City Council action?
Nothing to report on City Council.
Well, if that's the case, we're adjourned.